Please don't forget to hit like, subscribe and leave a comment for future content. With a quick introduction. So a quick introduction from me. So I know lots of people out there and who have joined, but I don't know everybody. And I'd like to say a quick thank you to you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and join us tonight. We're very lucky to have a special guest deliver for us tonight with a fascinating topic. It's one that sparks a lot of interest for me personally. So Anthony has kindly agreed to share some insight into his UEFA Pro License journey and an independent study that he conducted on there. But before we get into the study, just a quick introduction to Anthony. So I've known him for many years, especially from his early days at the Football Association, where he worked there for about 18 months. Sadly left us when I was in post there very shortly after joining us in the FA Skills Programme, and progressed to a role at Southampton and was there for about 5 years, working his way up from the under-14s to the prestigious under-18 team at Southampton. While he was at Southampton, he had a part-time role working with England under-17s and then progressed furthermore in his career down to working at West Ham, where he was there for about a season and a half. Notably achieved his UEFA Pro license during that period and became first team manager at Woking. And from there, he went on and became assistant manager at Grimsby and recently had an interim spell in League Two with 9 games as first team manager and was recently left Grimsby after 2 seasons. So that's a quick introduction to Anthony, and I hope I've covered everything in a very short period of time. But over to you, Anthony.
Thank you, Kevin, and thanks for everyone for joining. When I was speaking to Kevin about what we could look at tonight, I thought it was really interesting to have a look at the Pro License independent study that we had to put together. First of all, to get onto the Pro License now, I don't know if many people would know what the process is. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but it had recently changed in the last sort of 3 years, 2-3 years. Before, it was quite a very hard course to get onto. I applied when I was the West Ham sort of under-15s coach, really. And I didn't think I'd have a lot of chance to get on the course. But I thought if I applied that year, that was 3 seasons ago, I think maybe 4 seasons ago, that I might have to apply each year for sort of 3, 4, maybe 5 years to then have a chance to then eventually get on it. But I was fortunate enough and lucky enough to get on in my first try, because I think the process has been opened up a lot more now. Before, it used to be just a lot of ex-players and a lot of ex-managers would go, or a lot of managers would go on the course. And if you had a playing background or a playing career, which I'd never have done because I wasn't a good enough player, you would get on the course if you'd had that experience. However, this time they've opened it up a little bit more. They've got a mixture of people. So on my course was managers, assistant managers, people who have played first team football at a really high level, internationals as well. But then also there was 4 or 5 academy coaches that they put on the course, and 4 or 5 international coaches who were coaching overseas. So I feel like that gave me an opportunity to get onto the course. It was a rigorous process. You had to send in a video of your philosophy, asking or answering sort of 4 or 5 really key questions in there that you had to put together. And then we went away to St George's Park for 2 days, where they tested you quite a lot on all different sorts of things that we weren't expected to be tested on. For example, there was an emotional intelligence test. Then they would get the results of that test and then sort of really work you on all the areas that they felt were maybe that you could really be worked on. So that was a really interesting one. We went away, for example, into a room with 4 or 5 other of the candidates, and we got given a script of sort of 6 or 7 pages of like the history of a club with players and all this information. We had sort of 20 minutes to study it, and we'd all read it within 5 minutes and wondered what was going on. And then the next thing, a guy comes into the room and puts us all on the spot, makes us stand up in front of the group, and really absolutely hammers us with the questions about the script. And we had to obviously put the script down. We couldn't look at it. And it was all about not really whether you'd studied and looked and answered or knew the information, but more so of how you would deal with the pressure of being in front of the people that you're with. And there were some quite obviously big hitters in the room, ex-players and coaches, and managers and the I think they were actors or people who came in to do the work, and they really put you under pressure. So it was all about how you handle the pressure and things like that, just as an example. So I was very fortunate enough to get on the course. And this bit of work that I'm going to show you now is you could it was an independent study, so it was really the basis of the work over I think it was sort of 18 months was about the full course. And you could pick a topic and answer a question of any topic you wanted. So mine was how have former academy coaches made the transition into becoming a first team manager. I felt that was very relevant for me. I started the course as a academy coach at West Ham, working mainly in the youth development phase, some of the PDP phase, and then ended up as a first team manager at Woking in the National League, which is obviously very different skill sets for both, and very different in terms of the role. So I found this was very relevant to me. Some other people picked some other topics. For example, there was one of the international students picked something like the question was around what would a British manager need to do to be successful in a foreign country. Someone else picked on hamstring injuries in football in the championship. So you could really have a huge range of different topics, and it was excellent listening to these and going through these when the people presented them, because you learned a lot from them. The idea as well about the independent study was that it was a body of work, but you would have to go out. Really, the only sort of part on there they made compulsory was that you had to go out and interview people. So I interviewed 4 different people for mine, all coaches who had been in academy football in a different way, in a different variation. I'll get onto that in a minute. And then progressed and became a first team manager. So that gives you a little bit of background on the body of work that I'm going to present. And feel free to write in any questions or think of them at the end. I'll do the presentation and then we'll try and answer as many of them as we can through Kev once we've finished. People that I chose for the independent study, Brendan Rodgers, Graeme Murty, Darren, SARLL and Mark Warburton. And probably a mixed reason for choosing them all. I wanted to get a lot of variation in there. So you had from Brendan Rodgers, who was at Celtic at the time, had obviously managed Liverpool and managed in the Premier League with Swansea getting them promoted. To then someone like Darren SARLL, who went through the Stevenage Academy and then became academy manager, and then went into first team manager role in League Two at Stevenage. Graeme Murty had a different background, having been a top player. Reading, played in the Premier League, made many appearances for them. He'll probably kill me that I don't know exactly how many appearances he made. I hope he's not on here today. But he made a lot of appearances for Reading, and then went through the academy system as well, made the transition into first team management. And I thought Mark Warburton was a really interesting one because of his difference background here in the city and then into academy football and then becoming a first team manager through his pathway. So it was important to me to get some variation of people where I was in and around that level, being Darren SARLL in League Two, but then also possibly a manager that I looked up to, Brendan Rodgers, who as well hadn't had a playing career like myself, retired early because of injury, but then also to have an ex-player like Mertz in the mix to add like a different view also, and who was relatively new into his coaching career when he took that job. I actually hired Graeme Murty at Southampton as the under-14 coach, and that was his first coaching job after being a very successful player. So he did his badges during that time, went to Norwich, and then went on to Rangers, where he was took the under-20s and then become manager. So totally different pathways amongst all 4. Someone I really looked up to and never met before, Brendan Rodgers. Someone that I knew in Graeme Murty. A different background in Mark Warburton, and then Darren SARLL in terms of a level of sort of where I was at the time. So that was my reasoning behind the 4 of them. And then I thought it was important to sort of really highlight what the different progressions were. So Brendan started as a coach at Reading, working with the younger age groups, and then got poached to go to Chelsea to work with the under-18s when Jose Mourinho was there. He did that period for a while at Chelsea, worked with the reserve team, and then ended up working with the first team as an assistant and taking sort of players in the 23s and working with the younger players there. After that academy role, he then took the manager's job at Watford. They were in the Championship at the time, had some early success, left and went to Reading quite early. Some people could say that he wasn't very successful at Reading, lost his job, and then had a hard period sort of out of the game. I think it's quite well documented in a few pieces that I've seen with him as well, that or that I've read, that he found it hard to get back in and got a lot of knockbacks and setbacks before he managed to secure the job at Swansea, where obviously he did a fantastic job with a good brand, with a good style of football, and got them into the Premier League. That followed the period at Liverpool, and then after leaving Liverpool, was at Celtic. So he was at Celtic when I went up to interview him in January of that year. So obviously now he's gone to Leicester, but I don't have it. I've only got it up to date of when I finished the independent body of work. So that was his pathway. Someone very different, obviously, like we said, GRAEME, top player from Reading for many, many years. And then, as I said, we got the under-14 job at Southampton. I worked with him for 2 seasons there until he went and took a similar role to myself, but at Norwich, a lead phase coach, taking the under-16s and sort of running a phase. And he was really ready for that progression at the time to make that step up, and unfortunately didn't have that opportunity to progress at Southampton for whatever reason, but did really well at Norwich, had 2 successful seasons there, and then went and took the under-20s job at Rangers, a huge club up there. It was a big decision for him. He was a Scottish international as well, so that probably, I think, helped, and keeping in touch with him through his career has been very interesting for me to see that progression, especially in the academy side, to then go to Rangers, where very different, with the expectation of a huge club, and the younger players would win a lot every week, and how he would develop those players to then get him ready. The manager then at the time, I think it was a foreign manager. I can't remember his name, so I should have researched before we did this tonight. But he left, and then GRAEME got the caretaker role for a small amount of time at first. He did very well during that time. I think his win percentage was very high, and one of the highest that has been as a caretaker at Rangers, and then got offered the job until the end of the season that year. It was sort of up and down, really, because I'd probably say that Rangers didn't have the investment that they've got at the moment. Obviously, they've invested a lot in the players and the coaching staff there, with Steven Gerrard coming in. And it was a huge time for him going in there, and I'll talk about that later when we go into each individual with the interviews. But had a really interesting there, and now he's actually gone back into the academy. So he was manager or caretaker manager, then manager, then gone back into the academy doing a similar job to what he was doing, but has recently been promoted as sort of like a technical director, but not taking the under-20s anymore. So that's a new role for him. DARREN, totally different, as I said before. He started off as a player in non-league, played a lot of non-league football, and started coaching sort of under-16s, 18s at those clubs there at Stevenage, went to Brentford. I think under Andy Scott was a big influence for him. He went to Rotherham as well as the 18s coach, and then back to Stevenage as academy manager and youth team coach. Something that he found interesting, which I'll mention later as well, was that he found the job of working at lower level leagues meant that he would double up with roles. So he'd be doing the under 18s, but then would take the reserve game, but then also would be first team assistant coach on home match days, for example. So that was quite interesting for him when he went in as manager at Stevenage, because he'd already had that taste of a first team environment, being up close, just due to really, probably he said himself, like staff shortages, which I found very, very interesting. Maybe at the bigger clubs, and I know, like my time at Southampton, you would never get that opportunity necessarily. So that was quite interesting for him. After Stevenage, at the time he'd left his job at Stevenage and then gone back into the academy role at Stevenage. Since then, he went to Watford as academy manager, left Watford, and now he's manager at Yeovil in the National League. So probably it would have been really interesting to interview him now on his experiences, having gone academy into first team management, back into academy, back into first team management again. I think that would be really fascinating. So I would like to have interviewed him there, but at the time that was where we're up to. Mark Warburton, as we said, started off at Watford in the academy, and then went to technical director at Brentford, which he said was very beneficial before becoming a manager there at Brentford. Had good success there. Went to Rangers, got some promotions there with Rangers, then went to Nottingham Forest, and that was the last job that he'd had when I spoke to him. He's now obviously the QPR manager. So another one who's progressed since I've done that. But I thought this was a really interesting slide to show the real difference amongst the four people, successful in their own right, but with a very different history and different background. Me being the planner that I am, the meticulous planner, I had all these interview questions. I had about 50 questions I wanted to ask. I whittled it down to these 10, and I researched and looked into them. And then when I actually got to the interviews, the questions went out the window. It was quite funny because I'd spent a lot of time on this part thinking I'd be nice and organised and right on it and being very diligent as I like to think I am. But as I started the interviews, I realised, one, the questions were getting answered anyway. They were coming out, but it was better to just sort of ask one or two key questions or just frame a couple of things and just have a general chat with these people, because I found that all four of them had a different story to tell and a different way of speaking and a different sort of it was a different interview with all four of them, really. So I found that although I had these questions that I had quite planned and prepared to do, they absolutely went out the window. And I just sort of wanted to show that, to say, well, look, it didn't go as planned, but I ended up getting better results due to sort of letting the interviews flow and go from there. Brendan Rodgers was the first one that I went up to interview. I interviewed him in January of the year when he was at Celtic. A credit to him, I was only supposed to be there for 45 minutes, and I think I ended up being there for an hour and a half. And that was just typical him. We spoke constantly for the whole time. He was excellent and very open and honest with his answers. There's a couple of key quotes there that he spoke about. And I'd say probably a lot of the time that I spoke to him actually wasn't tactical or technical. It was a lot about the mentality of a manager and how he found the differences from being an academy coach into manager. And at the end, I'll sum up all these interviews with what I learned and specifically took out for myself. But I thought it was really good from him. It was a very busy time in the afternoon in January. Obviously, the Christmas period just come and the games are coming thick and fast. So I'm very beneficial, or I'm very, very lucky to have his time and use that. So I think that was it was great. It was quite funny actually, because about 10 or 15 minutes in the interview, he went, "Oh, I know who you are." And I immediately thought, as you do, "Oh, I'm in trouble here. I wonder what he's seen or what he's heard." He went, "I've seen your sessions on YouTube on the coaching manual. I was watching one the other day." And the purpose of the story is not really to say, "Oh, look at me," but more so to say that Brendan Rodgers was looking for sessions to do with his team. He said that he used one of the sessions I'd had that on the coaching manual when I was at Southampton many years ago. Some of the people might have seen them. And he was looking, first of all, he was looking for those sessions and not afraid to use it. I think I was doing it with the under 13s or 14s at the time. And he took that session and he said he used it on their warm weather training camp in Dubai. And that's where that last quote comes in: "The best coaches are the best thieves." And that really stuck with me, to say that if Brendan Rodgers, someone who'd been as successful as he's been, could be looking and scouring YouTube for sessions and use an under 14s coach at the time, my own session, I thought that was a very good lesson for me. So one thing I really took away from that was the best coaches are the best thieves. So I thought that was quite good. I just got a little bit of not footage but audio from the interview.
You want to do well.
Yeah.
And but you're only going to do well when your thinking is clear.
Yeah, got you.
Yeah. And if you have lots of things that are voices and all the background noise coming in, it won't be clear.
Yeah.
So I think it's important just to, it's always going to be there, like you say.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that, yeah.
And
you're always going to have that pressure, yeah.
Yeah, it's always going to be there.
Yeah.
And because, one, you'll put it on yourself, right? Because you want to do well.
Yeah.
And two, like I said, as you go through the levels and the more scrutiny and the more expectancy, and it's there. So it's a key thing, I think, as a manager, learning how to redirect. And is
there anything outside of football?
Being in the results business,
yeah.
You have to win.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to win in a certain way.
Yeah.
You know, it's not enough for me just to win.
Yeah.
I'd rather not coach.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, okay, I'll take trying to play the way we want to work, but not, you know, but winning a game that's not quite good. Okay, you take that every now and then. But
have you had
Yeah, so really interesting interview. Obviously, probably some key findings that I found really relevant for myself at the time. Like I said, I'd been at West Ham as an academy coach working with the under-15s. I was at Woking Football Club in the National League at the time. In January, going through a tough period, we'd sold a couple of our key players, and results weren't going great at that time. We'd had a good FA Cup run. We were third in the league sort of around October, and by January, we'd lost a few games, and I was probably under a bit of pressure then, I think. So we sort of ended up going a lot over, like talking about resilience, thinking about, I've got there, retaining your optimism. There's always hope to achieve, and optimism is a condition. And he spoke a lot about that, which I was really grateful for at the time. And it gave me a lot of confidence and belief just hearing those things and hearing that he'd gone through tough times as well, like when he was at Reading and that sort of thing. So that was a good confidence booster for me at the time. Although I did get the sack that season, actually, so maybe it wasn't as good. Maybe I shouldn't have had the interview, but no, anyway. So I thought another key bit was like what we heard on the audio then, how he said about it wasn't enough for him just to win. He needed to win in a certain way because he needed to create a brand and because he hadn't been a player, he said no one could associate with how his teams played unless he played with a certain style, and saying it wasn't enough for him just to win. It was really important to play the right way and to play in his style and his philosophy. So he's also spoke about he had the same principles as academy football, and he transitioned them into first team as he wanted to improve players and make them better, whether it be the under-12s when he was working at Reading or the first team at Celtic or Liverpool or Swansea. He wanted to make players better and improve them, and I thought that was a really strong and powerful part. So yeah, really good interview. Learned a lot from that, and really helped me at the time. The next one was Graeme Murty, a different type of interview because I know him very well and still speak to him now. He was at the time, I did the interview as well in January that year, and he was still, I think he'd become the permanent manager, but just until the end of the season. So this is around January, February time as well. And I think he'd actually had a bad result against Celtic at the time. So it was interesting to see him and how he was dealing with that, linking that from you don't get that pressure when you're academy coach compared to when you're a manager. And speaking to him about all the similar things I probably spoke to Brendan about, but getting his take on them was very different.
The result. And the ideal style of football is the one that works. I go back to when I first went in as the interim. The first time I said to the players, I say football in 4 ways. The first thing is your purpose. What was your purpose at any given time? You have to know it with or without the ball. We have to know it collectively. Are we going to keep the ball? Are we going to kill them off? Are we going to press? Are we going to drop? From that, you go into your structure. Is my structure appropriate to what the purpose is? If not, one of the two has to change. If we're not in shape, we're doing for a different purpose. If we are in shape, then the third thing is, can we deliver the intensity with the ball, with our bodies, with our mentality to make those two things work? The last thing is down onto the player, and then it's about quality. I think a lot of football at academy level is about the quality first. Quality. Whereas I think football teams at first team level can win with the first three, and the first three only, with limited players and limited facilities and limited environmental factors. At the very, very highest level, it will always come down to the quality if the first three are a given. But that is how I see the game, and then style comes from those four.
Okay, interesting.
I have consciously taken a decision to take a backward step at times and allow the coaches to coach, so I can try and see things from a different angle, and it's given me a real insight into some of the players and their daily habits, being less than elite.
Yeah.
So I've made a big thing recently about pointing out that our highest level, our highest standard, is more than a match for any team in this country. but it won't be that defines our season. It'll be what they allow their standards to be on a daily basis, which will be what they come down to under crisis.
Yeah.
So we need to try and get our standards up every day. And I'm very keen on not being...
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting quote from Mertz there. What the players allow their daily standards and habits to be will ultimately define their season, not when they are at their best performances. I thought that was a really good and a really powerful statement, one that I've thought about a lot. And also the bit about how he talks about he's seen football in 4 key ways: purpose, structure, intensity, and quality. Was an interesting way of looking at it, and one that probably he hadn't looked at that way when he was in academies, is what he said. But then, having seen this as a first team manager, and then he would get his style and identity from that. So very different to what Brendan was doing, but worked for him, arguably at the time. Probably the key findings for him, or what I found, which linked in to myself, I thought it was interesting where he said senior players want to be told and are surprised how much they wanted to be told and not take ownership around learning. And sometimes I found that going into Woking as a manager, I'd worked with, arguably you could say, very talented players at Southampton, a small stint at England as an assistant coach, only a very small one, but still saw what international players look like at that level from a learning perspective and a delivery of performance perspective. But then also at West Ham too, a different environment. But then working with players at the lower level of non-league, the one below League Two. And I'd probably agree with him to a certain extent on that, as in I think players want to be coached and developed and want to learn. But it was amazing how many chats we would have that the players wanted to be exactly told, where do I stand here when the ball's here? Well, it depends. What's the pressure on the ball? How high are the opposition? Are they pressing? Are they dropping off? What's their strengths and weaknesses? So it was an interesting one that he mentioned that, because I found that myself hard to deal with. And I thought the second point there, where he's learnt from 3 different philosophies at Southampton, Norwich, Rangers, before developing his own in a first team environment, it was quite a clear way at Southampton of how we play, a set formation, and the principles of play were fairly set there, which I enjoyed and learnt from at the time. He said the same at Norwich and the same at Rangers in the academy. Then suddenly, bang, he's thrust into the first team environment. Then he's developing his own philosophy. There wasn't a real probably clear philosophy for a first team, but there were certain outcomes where you had to win as a Rangers team and try and dominate in every game. So he'd had that influence of the different philosophies through the academy system, more probably being told how to coach to a certain extent and what to do, or to go on the script of what the academy expected their coaches to deliver, to then going into first team football where, bang, you've got to win games and come up with that yourself. So I found that quite interesting with him. And he mentions there, and I thought it was a key point, his best days are ahead of him in management, and he's still learning about himself, having made the transition. And I would vouch for that. He's definitely a learner, Mertz, and wants to improve and get better. He's now since gone back into academy football, and we speak regularly about that and how he's finding that. And I think he's definitely a better academy developer of players, having had that first team experience as a manager. And I would totally vouch the same for myself. I think, obviously, I've left Grimsby at the moment. I'm looking for my next opportunity. That could be in academy football. I haven't ruled that out. I'd still find that interesting to go back in the right environment. And I think that I'm definitely a better developer of players because I've had that experience of being a manager. When you take a young player, you put him in your first team, the manager's head's on the chopping block, so to speak, if they don't win, and you've got to trust that player to come in and really make a difference and try and deliver what you want in the team and perform under pressure, and especially when you're on a bad run and those things. So I think understanding that better, and I would encourage all coaches, academy coaches, having not had a playing career, so you might not know what the first team environment's like, is to go and watch first team football and try and get into change rooms of even non-league teams. I think it's fantastic to see what that's like when 3 points really on the line and the pressure's on, and when a team's conceded a goal in the last minute to lose the game, and you come into the change room afterwards, and to see what that change room environment's like, and to pick players and trust them to put them in. I think that was very interesting for me, hard to deal with at the time, but has definitely made me a better developer and coach of those, especially those players in and around that professional development phase. I think I'd probably recommended players for loan to clubs and to contacts before, or I'd said they were ready, or I thought I knew how they'd perform under the pressure, but didn't necessarily know what that would be like until now, having been in the pressure cooker myself. So I think that was a key bit there, and yeah, obviously got a lot from Mertz, and it was a good interview and taught me a lot about that transition from academy football into first team, and particularly interesting because I'd seen him work closely in academies as well. The third person I interviewed for the body of work was Darren SARLL. Really interesting guy. Didn't know him beforehand. Sort of come across him a few times, but had a really good run at Stevenage when he was manager. I think in his first season, he finished, I think, a high position in the table, and then ended up losing his job, I think, the season after. It was a really interesting interview, as I said before, because he'd come through non-league football, coached in and around those lower academies, certainly not at a Cat 1 academy club. He'd be a first one to admit that, but that worked in his favour in many ways.
Doing the press.
Yeah.
But coaching and management is a trade, and delivering messages is a massive part of our trade. Yeah. And obviously, Ted had never wrong. When things first started going wrong, especially as a caretaker manager, I always felt coaching would solve every problem.
Right, okay.
That's how I felt.
Right.
I can solve it because I'm a good coach.
Right. Right, okay.
How wrong. So you change. Let's work at that.
Yeah.
Tuesday we'll work at that.
Yeah.
Thursday we'll work at that. Friday we'll work at that. And then we'll be ready. All them problems will be gone for Saturday. It's rubbish. It's absolute tosh. Yeah. But it was my world, my development world, if you like. So,
okay.
And Glenn, when Glenn came in, he said, Darren.
Yeah, it's some really good points that that Darren made, and very different to the other two coaches and managers, and not necessarily better or worse, but very different. And got on with him really well, and a lot resonated with me in terms of the lower league football and being a manager and coming from academy football. I thought it was fascinating what he said about it. First, he could fix problems. That second quote there, first when he started, he could fix what was going wrong with coaching, which I would definitely be guilty of myself, but sometimes you can fix it with coaching. But then understanding that other times there might be other ways to fix it as well, not necessarily just on the training pitch. And the last quote as well was good. Every great team has dysfunction and conflict. I think in any high performance team, I don't know if anybody watched the Last Dance, the Chicago Bulls documentary. I thought that was fascinating. The dysfunction and conflict, and the way Michael Jordan pushed the players and the coaching staff pushed them, and they pushed each other. I think there was definitely dysfunction and conflict in that series, and that ended up them being winners. And I think you've got to have that at first team level. You don't necessarily have that at academy football, and that was something that I found different. The changing room is definitely a sort of a very different environment when you've got all different types of men in terms of backgrounds and ages and experiences, all wanting to win and all needing to win for that bonus and that extra money to feed their family. Down at the lower level, it really makes a difference. And at the top level, I'm sure it does as well. But there was a lot of conflict in the changing room before, during, and after games, and that was something that I found myself would learn from a lot from these interviews, and tried to implement and tried to go in the right way about it. But not necessarily that conflict was a bad thing. It meant that the team were cared about things, wanted to move forward and wanted to develop and wanted to get better. So I thought that was an interesting one. As I said with Darren before, he benefited a lot from learning early coaching experience, both doubling up roles. So something you wouldn't necessarily get at academy football. So he'd be in a youth team role, taking the youth team on a Saturday morning, then he'd go with the first team in the afternoon, and he'd be doing those double roles, and then he'd take the reserve team on a Tuesday. And he found that being in the lower leagues, sometimes without the amount of staff that they've got, you ended up doing a lot more than what you probably get or experience in another environment, maybe at a higher level of academy football. When he went into management, I thought it was really a really good bit that I focused on myself and made me think about, was that he recommended an older, experienced manager as a mentor that worked alongside him. He got given Glenn Roeder, the ex-player and West Ham manager, Newcastle manager, I think maybe Norwich manager as well, who came in to assist him as one of his assistants, but as more like a football advisor, or I can't remember what the term was at the time, director of football. But he said that it really helped him, one, because he knew Glenn didn't want to manage anymore at the time, but he really helped him because they had some really good chats, and Glenn had been there and seen it all and been in change rooms and a lot more experience than Darren, but was still open to his ideas and wanted to work properly and coach properly and didn't want to take too many sessions. Darren SARLL said he took a lot of the training, but Glenn would just watch and be the eyes and the ears, and then Darren would run things past him. He said, especially when things weren't going good, it was great to have that older, experienced person there. And it certainly made me think about my own experience. When I was manager at Woking, I brought in an experienced assistant called Jason Goodlift, who knew the level, who'd been a player. Rightly or wrongly, whenever I go in as a manager, or even like at Southampton when I hired GRAEME MURTY, I do like to have an ex-player on the coaching staff. I think they can add value where I possibly can't. But then I think if you just had a team of staff with ex-players but no coaching experience, it might not work. But then vice versa, I found myself, if I had 4 or 5 Anthony Limbricks on the coaching staff, I don't think that would work either. So I think that's a really good idea and something that I would think about if and when I get the opportunity again to become a first team manager, of bringing someone in with like even older and really experienced in management. I look at Cambridge at the moment with Mark Bonner. They brought in an assistant manager, Gary Waddock, who'd been a manager for many, many years. I know Gary well and is a very experienced guy, managing in the National League and in the league as well. And he's gone into as an assistant to help Mark, and I think they've had an amazing start to the season. So fair play to them, and I really think that combination of the two of them has done well, and is one of the key reasons why they're doing well. And yeah, I thought that something that I backed up myself that I really believe in is the last point that's on there. I really enjoyed the link with Academy, even as a first team manager, and want to continue to do this for the future. And I'd say the same about myself. I'd always go and watch the Academy train and speak to the Academy coaches at Woking when I was there. I'd go and watch the reserve games, go and watch the FA Youth Cup, try and get to as many youth team games as I could, because I've been at clubs where the managers at the first team level in the Premier League aren't bothered with the Academy staff or players, and then others that are really hands-on and very interested in it. And it is motivating when you're an Academy coach and staff want to come over and watch your session and have a keen interest in it and know the players. And I've had a lot of experience in that both ways, actually. So I know what that felt like. So I thought that was important that I continued that, and it was good to hear Darren go through that too. Mark Warburton was the last person that I interviewed. He was a really one that I got a lot from, actually, in a different way. So I think at the time he just left Rangers. He just left Rangers, and I think he was close to getting the Nottingham Forest job. And then he was there quite quickly and then went to QPR now. But this was just before he'd been at the Nottingham Forest job, so he'd left Rangers. Might have been 2 seasons before, or maybe he might have been at Nottingham Forest, actually. But we spoke a lot about the experience of him being at Rangers, and quite in terms of what he delivered was quite common sense things, but something that can be overlooked. So he talks there a lot about the relationship with the media and the press, a key to being successful as a manager. And something that I definitely underestimated from going from academy football to first team football. At Southampton, I'd never really done any interviews. West Ham didn't do any. When I took the 18s job at Southampton, you do a small amount with the staff of West Ham for the Twitter or for the Instagram or for the YouTube, and they were very easy on you if you got beat or you didn't have a good performance. The results weren't highlighted as much, and their job was really to promote the club. So it was quite an easy sort of leading into media. And then suddenly, even at that level of Woking in the National League, I was shocked at how many media reports there were, how much social media was, the local paper, the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the fans forums, the everything. The media was a totally different thing. And probably in hindsight now, if I'd had this interview before with Mark, I would have thought a lot about it, maybe pick some more people's brains about it on how to deal with the media, because it's fine when things are going well and you're winning, and we were winning quite well and we were third in the league come October, and I found the media very easy to deal with then. However, come the turn of the year in January, when we'd sold a few players and we weren't getting the results and fans were definitely on our back and we were under pressure, it was definitely a lot harder to deal with in the media. And when you're the manager, something you never realise when you've gone from an academy coach, you're the face. When you do the media, you're the board listen to the media, the people who are ultimately going to hire you or fire you listen to the media, listen to what you say, the players listen to you as well, the fans listen to you as well, but the players know things that the board and the fans don't. The board know things that the players and the fans might not. The fans don't know a lot of what goes on behind the scenes. So you get beaten 3-0, you know you haven't played well, you're really disappointed. How do you come out in the media? And I thought this was quite interesting, speaking to Mark and picking his brains about that. And I'm talking about the experience being hard at Woking in the National League, at Rangers, which GRAEME MURTY would know, and Mark Warburton, that must be a different level. So that was really, really good to speak about that. And I thought that was another good one there. I've put a few key bits about the media, but every statement and every action has a consequence. So whatever you say in the media can come back to you. So I found myself, what I started to do after this interview in particular was starting to plan the media, what I wanted to say, maybe thinking 3 key points. So whatever the questions of the interviewers would ask me, I'd always try and relate it or try and get back to it. Try and get back to those 3 key points. And someone I learned a lot from in the media actually was Michael Jolly, who was the manager at Grimsby Town, who I assisted, was the assistant manager for 2 seasons or a season and a half. He was very good with the media, and we regularly reflect on that. And also Ian Holloway, who was good with the media in a totally different way. He was so off the cuff and great storyteller and crazy with his assumptions, and could probably get away with a lot more than I could as a manager myself. But he was quite interesting too. So yeah, spoke to Mark Warburton a lot about that, and that gave me some very key points on how to deal with it. And sorry, just going back on that one, one of the good bits I found with him was he said something to a role that I'd never really thought about, becoming a director of football, which helped him with the transition from academy manager to a manager, and also meant he knew the club inside out when he made the transition to first team football. I thought was something that I'd never really thought of myself. I thought, I'd never want to be a director of football because you're dealing with the contracts, with the player recruitment, you're speaking to the manager, but you're never getting on the grass and coaching and working with the players, which is a real passion of mine and something that in all the jobs I've done and probably will do. But that, hearing him say that it prepared him to become a manager better from academy football was very interesting, and one that I took on board and will think about in the future. His view was as well that it was important not to take everything in training, so not to take all the coaching sessions, so we can analyse and watch players' body language and get good coaches in to work with him. I've always been someone who's been a coach, been a developer. I'm probably more of a head coach myself as opposed to being a manager. I still take all the training session. We split into small groups and that sort of thing with whoever I work with, but something like I would do in academy football, I think that's one of my selling points and one of the main bits that I would use as a coach and to get the players on my side to go and deliver what I promised them when I go and sign them. And I probably tried to get a little bit away from the training at times, but then still find myself getting drawn back to them. So not saying I definitely disagree with that, and something maybe as I get older I might want to do, but something that I still definitely do is take all the training sessions. Look at the what if scenarios and have strategies worked down in advance. I found was a good point to take staff because of this meeting, and go through the what ifs. What if the centre back gets sent off? What if the left back gets injured? What if we're behind in the game? What if we're in front? What are the changes we're going to make? And do that also with the players as well. Set up the scenarios in the week of what happens if a man gets sent off. What do we do if we're chasing the game here? And it led me as well to something that I did a lot before, but really hammered home the what if scenarios. And sometimes it just triggers key parts and helps you recognize what you're already doing. So the key findings that I found really linking, and this is the key part, really linking from going from an academy coach into a first team manager that were really beneficial for me were 4 main things. Was 1 about philosophy, 2 about the relationships, 3 about that transition from academy into first team, and 4 about the resilience of what it means to be a manager. So if I start in the top left-hand corner, the people that I interviewed were very clear in their vision and in very different ways. They had clear values and principles, and they really looked to continue learning and a thirst for knowledge, and all had belief in their own ability. and self, and that was highlighted in their philosophy, and they found that that was key. I think not just their coaching and playing philosophy, but also their values and their principles and their beliefs in how they coached and worked with people. Something that I was very keen on in myself, that I was very clear when I went into management and into being an assistant manager. I was very clear on the philosophy of how we were going to play, and probably the least of my worries was the actual football part. The other bits were the bits I found hard, the managing up with the board, managing the staff, managing the relationship with the fans, the media, as I spoke about before. So the clearer you are, I found, that I took from these interviews and that I was with my philosophy, the easier it would be to maintain that I could work on the other things that I needed work on. Relationships in the top right, as I said, managing up and managing down, relationships with key people and players, and communication and being a holistic approach, developing the person as well as the player. You'd heard many times your advanced youth awards and that sort of thing. But when I got into first team football, it was so key to deal with things like things that I hadn't really had to deal with before, like family issues. Adults that had problems with relationships with their wives or girlfriends, then they had to deal with their kids. If when a kid was sick or ill, or I had Woking who broke his leg and had a very bad leg break, Damon Lethbroke, and had to retire from football at 28 years old. That took a huge toll on everyone and on myself as well, actually, dealing with him, going and visiting him in the hospital. It was that bad that he nearly lost his leg and couldn't play anymore. But now he's a coach at Watford and runs one of the Pro Direct programs in London. He's doing really well. We still speak now, but at the time it was a lot to deal with. And then you had to prep and win games and answer the questions in the media all about those things. So it was dealing with those things on a relationship point of view was a big difference and change from academy football. Not saying that you don't get those things in academy football, you do, but they're just very different, very different when you go into first team football. The bottom left in there, more about this bit was for me was about the transition, making sure that there's a strong link. I love academy football, love working with young players. I remember the Rangers coach, or he was a Liverpool coach at the time, Michael Beale, said to me, once you're a developer, you're always a developer. I wish that was my own statement, but I can't claim it. It was definitely his. And I think that I'll always have a strong link with the academy, no matter what role I have. And that was really important. You don't become a first team manager and then just forget about what you've done. I love bringing the young players through. I did that successfully at Woking and at Grimsby Town, and want to continue to do that. And I really believe that I've been a coach in academy football and I'm a coach in first team football, and that senior players want to be coached and developed, but they need to be in different ways. What motivates that academy player or what motivates that first team player might be different. Some players don't love the game, I've found, and are only motivated by money. However, they can still be successful in the game. Now, listen, who isn't motivated by money? I've just recently realized that a lot more since I've just had a young family and had our first baby, that you need to provide for your family, and there's no issue with that. But what I mean by that is not all players love the game maybe as much as, say, myself or a lot of the coaches out there who are listening do, but they can still be motivated, and finding out what motivates them is very important. And that link, and that's different sometimes from academy into first team football. So that was one thing I learned from interviewing all the people and then putting into my own first team experiences. Resilience as well. All four of the people I spoke to spoke about key to being a manager is you need to manage that resilience. How do you do that? Retain your optimism was a key part that kept coming up. Dealing with the pressure and social media. And also the bit that I haven't mentioned so far was about family and your private life. It was definitely hard on my wife at the time when I became a manager. It was a big change from being in the academy to having those pressures, and something that I really enjoyed. And when you aren't the manager or working in first team football like now, I've got a lot more time on my hands. It's difficult to go to games and network with people and watch matches due to sort of the COVID situation at the moment. I really do miss that pressure, and you don't realize that at the time. But sometimes it can be hard on your family, and I think that's a bit that I need to improve on moving forward, to make sure that when I'm with the family, I've got that family time. A lot of people ask me advice on that area, on how do you switch off, what's your keys to switch off, and I politely warn them away from that question. I'm not a very good person to ask on that. It's something that I really need help on and need to improve. So thinking thinking about those things and realizing that that might be an area of improvement for yourself, which I did, certainly having done the interviews from this thesis of work was very important. So yeah, those were the main 4 bits that I learned, or that I found were the key findings from being an academy coach going into a first team manager, and hopefully tried to implement a lot of those in the years to come, and something that I'll look back and check back on regularly. And yeah, that's it. That's all I've got. Hopefully it wasn't too long, so I went for a little bit longer than was originally planned. I think I'm going to hand over to Kevin now, who's going to collate some of the questions and feel free to fire them in. Like he said, if there's questions that haven't been answered, I'll do my best to answer them, and maybe Kevin can get them together, and then I can email them over to him and he can send them out to people. So we'll do our best to get through as many as we can, but thanks for listening, and hopefully it was interesting.
Thank you very much, Anthony. So you did actually touch on one of the questions that's just come in. So I'm just going to leave my laptop. So one of the questions that just came in was was from Brandon, and it was, how do you get your work-life balance when you've got that role as a first team manager? What do you do? What strategies would you employ?
I've got to be honest, I'd like to ask Brandon if he had some strategies for me to employ, because it's I found it very hard, Brandon, if I'm honest, because, well, first of all, I mean, I'd had the upbringing in academy football, where anybody who works in academies there would know what I'm talking about. You're in early. We were in regularly at 7:30, 8 o'clock at Southampton. We do the sessions during the day. I was very fortunate enough at the time that it was just when EPPP came in, or just before EPPP came in. So they were I was full-time under 14s coach at Southampton. So I'd come in and assist the 18s and 21s at the time with their sessions, working with good coaches there. Then you do the afternoon sessions with some of those players too. So I managed to work with some very good players, older age groups. Then the under 14s, the age group I work with, would come in that night. We'd regularly do sessions and finish coaching at 9 o'clock most nights. So I'd always had that good work ethic, Brandon, that I would say that I would work a lot of hours and do long hours for not much pay. I'm sure everyone would realize that when they do, all the coaches out there who are listening. Kev would back me up there as well, that it's long hours. And I took that really into being a first team manager, and still do now. So yeah, I mean, probably the one thing is probably this thing that's the most difficult to manage, the phone. I've started probably one strategy is to say it's on a Sunday and it's a day off and I'm going out for some family time or a meal with the family. I'd leave the phone at home for a couple of hours and not answer any calls or messages. I do tend to think if it's really important, people will get back to you, and you can always get back to them. And also not replying to people straight away. Sorry if I haven't replied to a few people out there straight away, but getting back to them later on means that if you reply to them straight away, they'll expect you to reply straight away. So I probably learned that that's probably helped me a little bit, but like I say, I wouldn't mind some extra tips on that area.
Just as a follow-up question to that, how do you view leadership theory, leadership styles when you're away from your family and you're in the club and you've got to deal with people managing up and managing down? What sort of leadership styles do you see in those environments, or do you use in those environments?
Do I use myself more, or do you mean do I see myself? Yeah. I mean, I think you've got to be flexible and adaptable. But I think you still have to. One of the key important bits I find is you've still got to be yourself. So, for example, like, I think you need to lead how you feel comfortable leading. So I'm not really a screamer and a shouter and handing out the old school dressing down or hairdryer treatment, you could say. However, that needs to come out in a first team environment every now and again, I've found. And I would probably do that once or twice a season if it was a really, not necessarily a poor performance, but about whether the work rate and the effort wasn't there from the players. That would be a one thing that I would really sort of cut loose about, you could say. So I'd only do 1 or 2 of them a season. That's a different leadership style, a bit more dictatorship. But at times, I think the players needed to see that you had that in you to be firm and to be aggressive to do it. However, if I'd done that leadership style regularly and was quite telling them what to do all the time and on them all the time, and aggressive with that. I think I would have got found out because it's not my natural style and my leadership style. So I think especially with first team, players can suss you out, and they're always looking to see if there's a little weakness in you, or to see what sort of chinks in the armour you've got in between the staff, or when you're as a manager. And so do the board, and so do the media, etc. as well. So I felt being myself with my own leadership style was important. I've always felt for myself, as being a young non-playing manager or working with first team, that I needed to make sure I had really strong relationships with the players, and something I've had all the way through. And that can be being harsh with the players and giving them feedback, or dropping them and doing the right thing and telling them exactly what I thought. But I think I built up that trust with them by having very good relationships with them. And I tried to do that, whether it was the cleaner at the club or whether it was the striker who was getting paid a lot more money. I tried to have good relationships with everyone there, and I felt that was one of the things that put me in a good position to communicate and to lead. And also I think leadership by setting examples as well, by being the first in, working hard yourself, doing your research, being good at your craft, knowing what you're doing, I think, or coming across knowing what you're doing with the detail was very important. I went into Woking and had 10 values that I'd put up on the change room in my office, and I would regularly go through them with the players, and values that link to the club. So like, one was hard work, respect, ambition, which I thought was really important, and honesty. And they were the 4 key ones, with some that were scattered around the outside, like communication, having a positive mindset, etc. So I found going back and referring to those values helped me lead the group, because I would check myself regularly on those values, but then also see if I was living by those values and the players were, and that sort of thing. So that helped me be a leader. I'm not sure what style you would call that, Kev. You would probably know more than me, but I felt that was a good way to help lead the group as well.
So thank you. There's a couple more that have come in, and I'm sort of going to merge a couple of the questions, if you like. So you mentioned that you've had some real highs with the FA Cup, being third in the league, and some real lows as well. Did you ever doubt yourself, or do you ever doubt yourself when things aren't going so well? And do you almost feel like at times, the word within the question was, do you ever feel like you're almost not ready, based on the fact that you don't necessarily, or merging the 2 questions, you're not necessarily ready for it now because of a lack of playing career? Or do you find it hard to win over a dressing room sometimes when things aren't going well because of a lack of a playing career?
Yeah, I think when I first started coaching very early on, when I was like 19, 20 years old, I found that very hard to do. But I think the more I'd conditioned myself, I always wanted to make sure that I was a better coach, a better communicator, studied the game more, because I couldn't rely on my playing background and my career because I didn't have one. So I've always gone in with the mindset that I've got to go and prove myself, more so than an ex-player. So, for example, on my A license, it was quite a big deal at the time. It was in 2010. I was a young coach. I remember when I enrolled on the course and got on the course. I think I was coaching semi-professional at a club in the Ryman Premier League, Wingate Finchley, and working. I think I was working at the skills program actually with you, Kevin. And I remember the course tutors, when they looked at me when I first come in, they said, "Oh, Australian, cross, young, cross, no experience, cross, never been a player, cross, funny accent, cross." And that just motivated me, really. I mean, obviously they didn't say that, but I could tell what they were thinking, and they definitely. So I knew that my sessions had to be better than maybe the ex-player who had the name. And I think that gave me a lot of confidence getting my A license and passing the course. It was a really, you would remember it, Kevin, as well, a really rigorous process back then, and very different to what it is now. It was just pass or fail when you'd done your session, and you had to deliver 2 sessions. And I delivered them and passed well at the time. And that gave me a lot of confidence. So I think the start of the question, you said something like, did you ever doubt yourself? Sometimes I would doubt what I was doing, but I never doubted myself, because I believe that I think you're always ready. You just don't know. When you're ready. Who says when you're ready? I think if you waited till you're ready, you'd never take anything on board. And I'd rather try and fail than not try at all. I mean, I was at West Ham. I had a very comfortable job with the academy. Probably never going to get the sack there within reason. I mean, if I did a good job and continued to do what I was doing, I'm at a well-respected club there. But I took the plunge into first team football and put myself under pressure, because I needed that I needed that pressure. So I'd never complain about a first team manager getting the sack, because I'll probably get jobs because other people get the sack or whatnot. And I think anyone who complains about that, I'm not saying it's right. I think managers should be getting more time, but I would always never complain, because I put myself in that position to put myself under pressure. And you do miss the pressure. So yeah, I don't believe that you're not ready for it. I think you've got to be a quick learner and thinking on your feet, because you might not get other chances if you don't do well. And I need to make sure that the next manager's job I get, I do well, I get successful, I get a promotion, or I keep a team up, and then I get a move to a better club to prove that I can do it. So yeah, probably the big thing there is, do I ever doubt myself? I don't. But do I doubt what I'm doing? Yeah, all the time. You constantly think about it and try and improve it and try and make it better. Hopefully that answers the question all right.
Yeah, well, it leads on nicely to sort of the next two questions that have sort of jumped out. So where do you go for your technical and tactical knowledge gaps that you might identify as areas for development? And have any of the managers that you've worked with or come across impacted or challenged or changed your coaching philosophy and style?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the second part of it I'll answer first, if that's all right, is that I think it's always a developing thing. My tactical and technical delivery, my coaching, first of all, the philosophy and how the teams change and play. I think you do need to be adaptable. I mean, my teams will always try and play football. We'll try and press from the front. We'll try and get a lot of crosses in the box. We play high tempo. But it depends on the players that you've got in your team as well. So that might have to be adapted. I was very fortunate at Woking that there wasn't many players left on the playing squad roster, really. You could say there was only 4 or 5 players left. That meant I could bring in the players exactly that I wanted. When I came into Grimsby as the interim manager, I had to play a little bit different. Wasn't able to play the system that I wanted to play, or that I was more familiar with, more comfortable with, because of the type of players that we had. We had more midfielders, we had more number 8s, so we played 4-3-3 with 1 sitter and 2 8s, because that was, I felt, the best to suit the players that we had. Whereas at Woking, we played 4-2-3-1, or at times 4-4-2, sometimes towards the end, but more so 4-2-3-1. Although the crowd were crying out for us to play 2 strikers many times at Woking, but I tried to resist as much as I could. That was the more system that I felt comfortable with, because that's what I'd grown up with at Southampton, and I recruited the players to fit in with that system. So I think it's always developing and improving, and I think you can see that with even the top managers. So you look at Klopp, he's developed and improved his philosophy. It hasn't stayed the same since he's been at Liverpool. There have been small tweaks and changes. Same with Guardiola at Man City, from when he was at Man City compared to Bayern. And the main principles stay the same. I mean, I'm a big believer that it's not about the formation. That's not necessarily the dictatorship of how you play. It's more about the principles and the way you play the game. So you could play 3-5-2 the same way that you play 4-2-3-1, with the same principles and style and outcome that you're trying to achieve, just with an extra defender, or only 1 player in the wide area, or 2 strikers working as a pair together as opposed to 1 up front. So I think that's important. And other ways of where do I try and get the tactical information from? I think a variety of things. I'm always sort of looking for things on Twitter to see. I always watch games. I try to watch games with the commentary off, so I'm not influenced by the commentators and what they're saying, and I can watch it myself. So I'll watch football, for example, and really think of a key topic to watch, as opposed to just watching the game. So sometimes I watch or most of the time I watch just halves of football. It takes me about 60 minutes to watch a 45-minute half of football, because I'm pausing, rewinding, and looking at the specific topic that I've chosen to watch on that time, as opposed to just watching the game at random. I find that works best for me to help me learn tactically and improve.
Brilliant. So, one of my favourite sayings is a philosophy should be written in pencil, not ink. And we've had that conversation many times. Definitely. And I think over the years, over the sort of next 20, 30 years of your career, I'm sure it will continue to evolve and grow and change. Gary's put a question in the box. Gary Piggott has asked, so other than establishing a good work-life balance, what do you consider to be a key area for development for you going forward, and where might you source your next developmental opportunity?
Yeah, I think for me, being a manager or an assistant manager, having only been in the pro game for 3 years, or the first point, I call it 3 points football, I feel that the development areas that I will need will definitely be leadership. So I think that'll be a key strand going all the way through my career. I think you'll have things you'll work on, not necessarily that you're necessarily bad at or need improvement on, but that'll just need work. So I think being a relatively inexperienced manager, I think leadership of all kinds I need work on. I need to manage up better. So manage up at board level, something I haven't had as much experience on. I feel like now, having had the 2 roles at Grimsby as assistant manager and caretaker manager, but then also at Woking as manager, has really helped me with that. And I find that one of the best ways is, now I've got a period of time that I'm out of work, is really going back and evaluating what I did, how I did it, what I could improve on, speaking to other people who have gone through similar things and what they did, or asking their opinions and advice. I find that really beneficial for me. I regularly ring people up in the game who are of a lot bigger level than me, or who have managed at the same level and done things that I'd gone through, and then try and pick their brains and then relate it to my own issue. But I found the periods where I've been out of work, which has been a couple of times now, I find is a really good time to evaluate, and I learn quite well from that. When I'm actually in it at the time, there's so much going on and it's so busy, you're planning, preparing for games, getting the players ready and doing all the hours. I don't find it as, or I haven't found it so far as good to evaluate and learn from the experience at the time, but I find afterwards really works for me. So I do enjoy those periods of sort of rest when I can evaluate that. And I probably think next, I think I'd like to maybe try and get a place on the League Managers Association, their management course. I've heard that's quite a good course. I think that would be something that would help me. And I've spoken to you, Kev, about some other things to do as well. Maybe some psychological sort of degrees or some courses as well that I think you can learn from. I'm always sort of trying to read as much as I can and pick up little things. And I read a lot of books that are outside of football, from business books or business things and mindset books and that sort of thing. So trying a couple of ways, really, I try and do as much as I can to try and keep learning. I think you've got to keep learning, and will be for a long, long time.
That's it, mate. Learning has no fixed end point. When you look at the interviews, if you were sitting on the other side of the table now, if somebody was on their pro license and they came to interview you around the same question, what advice would you give them based on your experiences now in those environments? And linked to that, who from the interview process had the biggest impact on you?
It's a good question. Who asked that one? That was a good one.
It's actually an Australian, a guy called Taylor.
Nice, like it. The Aussie, there's another Aussie about. Can't believe it. Get him off, Kev. Get him off. That's a really good question, isn't it? So I think probably the key bits I found from going from academy into first team management, if I was getting interviewed, I would would be, make sure you have a plan or you've practiced dealing with the media, thinking about your questions or the way that people ask you the questions, what you want to say going into the interviews, how you're going to handle certain things with players. Maybe I found that I ended up inadvertently getting a mentor through the ECAS program, a guy called Sir Paul Grant, who was a head teacher at one of the most underprivileged or underperforming schools in London. And he was a very successful head teacher there, and he's become like a mentor to me, and obviously in a different field other than football. But I would get him to watch my media interviews and make him like analyze what I was saying and how I was saying, and give me improvements and things to work on. So that would be one thing I would advise managers or coaches to go into. I'd probably say the other thing would be, don't get too high, don't get too low. You're never as good as what you are, but you're never as bad as what you are either. I'd probably say, looking back in hindsight, when we're third in the league, we'd beaten Bury in League One at the time in the FA Cup. I was probably thinking that I'd cracked this management thing. I had a lot of interest from other clubs at the time, and I thought there was no way I was going to get the sack that season, bare minimum. We were third in the league, we were flying. But after we'd sold a few players, I wasn't able to get the good enough players back into the building, and we went down in terms of results. I think that was probably it was a difficult time, definitely a difficult time, and I'd say, yeah, never get too high, never get too low. And I probably did during those times. So I've certainly learned a lot from that. So I'd probably answer, that would probably be another key thing I would say to someone if they were asking me the same question. What was the other part to the question, Kev? Sorry.
So the first part was around what advice would you give if you were on that side of the table? And then the second part, sorry, I'm just going to double check it. I'll put it in the box here. 1 second, mate. I'll make sure I get the second part right. So who had, from the interview process, who had the biggest influence on you and why?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, I know it's a bit of a sitting on the fence answer, but they all did for different reasons. I think probably Brendan Rodgers, because he's someone that I'd always looked up to from afar and never met him before. I didn't think that someone at the level I was at would ever be able to get an interview with him. I'd always looked up at him and followed his career and studied him and watched his teams and that sort of thing. I was really impressed with him when I spoke to him, and just the fact that I was there for I was only supposed to be there for 45 minutes, but was there for an hour and a half during a busy time for him, and seeing him and for that amount of time really was it had a big impact on me. So I'd probably say the interview with him, just because he'd been someone that I'd looked up to so much and learned a lot, not just from that interview, but sort of backed up a lot of the things that I was thinking already. I'd probably say him, but I really did learn a lot from the process. I think that's why it was such a good independent study, is in that I found it quite hard at the start. It was just such a blank canvas. You could just do virtually within reason whatever you wanted, as long as you interviewed people and came up with your key findings and things that you learned. And I wasn't sure what to do, but when I stumbled across this question, I thought, yeah, this would be something that would really interest me, and linked in what I was doing at the time. I found that quite good. So I really did find it beneficial interviewing all the people. I'd probably say Brendan was the one that hit home the most.
So Brendan's obviously got quite a clear philosophy, and he outlined that within the interview process. And he mentioned that, he would rather not coach if he couldn't win in a certain way. So a couple of questions have come in from Harvey and Guido, both asked pretty much the same question. How hard is it implementing and living your philosophy when 3 points are on the line?
Yeah, listen, it is tough, but I'd probably say my first season at Woking, that was, I was quite clear in the way I wanted to play. We played good football, but we got the ball forward early if we needed to. We had a pattern of play, and I think at that level, sometimes if the centre halves split and you play out from the back, and then you go long, people think you're playing out from the back. So we probably disguised it of playing more football than what we actually did. But my team's always played high tempo and pressed from the front, and I definitely implemented that. I felt the better that I could implement that, the more likelihood it was of getting 3 points. Did I adapt and change it and tweak it during the season? Yeah, I did. And when results weren't going well, we did change one or two things. But I'd probably say at Woking that I probably ended up getting the sack before the end of the season. I think we'd won 2 in 9 games, because I was very hell-bent on sticking with my philosophy and how we were going to play. I remember the fans were screaming for 4-4-2 at the time. I think it was more the fact that we were conceding goals as opposed to not scoring enough. But yeah, I was quite happy that sticking with my principles was the way I wanted to go, and something that I would always do. And listen, ultimately could have cost me my job. When I went in at Grimsby as the assistant manager, that was a really good experience. Then I took over as caretaker and played in a similar way, but a slightly different way. But listen, at the end of the day, you do need to get the 3 points. But I think I'd probably resonate on the side of what Brendan did say. I think if you've been an ex-player, then you need, if you haven't been an ex-player, and you don't have a brand or a style of football for people to remember you or link you to, then I think it's important that you come in with a style. And I wasn't necessarily just doing that style for the sake of it. That's what I felt would get the best results, and that's what I really believed in. So I'd proved that my time at Woking, you could do that, although obviously we ended with bad results, that I put a team together and could play a certain way at that level, and to a degree at Grimsby as well. So it's something that I'll definitely stick with, but it's something you do wrestle with. You always challenge what you're doing, and that's where you need good staff around you to challenge what you're doing in the right way. And I think that can definitely help you implement that.
So you're clearly a man of your principles, and you're quite set in your ways when it comes to your philosophy. It's personal when you want to live it. If a job come up at the moment, any job, what would make it the right job for you right now? in order for you to take it?
My wife would say if it pays well, she would say take it and play 4-4-2 and launch it. That's what she would say, but she can probably hear me in the other room. But I would, yeah, I mean, look, it's a difficult question. I mean, I'm out of work at the moment. Obviously, in the current time with the COVID situation and being in lockdown, there's less jobs, I'm sure, than what there was before. I'd love another experience in first team football because that I've only had 3 years playing in first team football as a manager and as a coach. So I feel like I need a few more years in that. But I'm open to working and going back into academies as well. It's something I feel passionate about. I think for me at the moment, the opportunity comes where the best environment is. So let me explain that a little bit more. The last few years being at Woking and Grimsby have been good environments that I've had to create and do myself and lead the staff and the team and work with the current manager who's there, but be of a high enough level that I can implement everyone. It'd be good to really be at a club or that's really trying to push and really invest in sort of like coaching and development and sees that as a real key way moving forward. So whether that's an under 16 coach at Tottenham, I'd be really interested in something like that, a really good category 1 academy where I could learn and develop around people around me and work with top quality young players again, or a really high flying League 1 club with a strong manager that I could go in as an assistant as, or a really good National League club that I could go and be a manager as, but really try and push on, or even like a Conference South side that are really trying to push and get promotion and want to invest the right money, not necessarily heaps of money. You don't have to have a lot of money to be successful, but want to put it in the right areas of coaching, of development, of video analysis, of bringing young players through. So I think the environment's going to be key in my next job. And I think that's going to be, or that is something that I'm really focused on at the moment.
So I know you had a real positive environment when you were involved in non-league, and you still keep in touch with Wingate and the chairman there. So questions come in that's got 2 sections to it from Rich. So in terms of what are your thoughts on non-league as a route through the management pathway, and based on non-league and other experiences, what other skills outside of coaching could you develop by potentially pursuing that path?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. I'm so glad. Who asked that? Sorry, Kev?
Richard.
Richard, great question. Such a good question, because I think the main person who's probably showed how successful that can be is the Cowley brothers, Danny and Nick Cowley. Someone who I try and speak to as much as I can and pick their brains, because they've shown the pathway that they've had to get all the way to the championship, having been PE teachers, going into non-league football, working through the system, Concord and then Braintree and then Lincoln, and then pushing on from there and going to having a very successful season, by the way, keeping Huddersfield in the championship, I think shows that you really can do it. Because probably in a way, I think that's why this question was so interesting to me, how former academy coaches made the transition and becoming a first team manager, because it is very different. There's no pressure on results really in academy football. You're there's pressure to develop the players. You don't have to necessarily win. No one would remember the under 16 West Ham score when I took the team 3 years ago that we lost 5-0 to Chelsea, or no one remembers that, but you remember the players that came through, whereas everyone would remember the scores of Woking when we did well or didn't do so well in Grimsby and so forth. So I would argue that does academy football necessarily prepare you to be a manager? It doesn't do everything. So going through the non-league route gets you in the first team football environment. It might only be part-time, so you're working with a lesser quality of player, but 3 points is on the line. There's 1-0. You're 1-0 up in the game. You've got 2 minutes to go. How do you see the game out? Do you do it by keeping possession of the ball? Do you do it by putting it in the corners? Do you do it by slowing the clock down? How do you do it? And you don't learn necessarily those things or exposed to those things enough as an academy coach. So I think without doubt, first team football at non-league level is a great pathway and something that more people could look through. And it was funny because I started working at the skills program with yourself, Kev, doing non-league football Tuesday, Thursday evenings and Saturday games. And you'd be surprised how much that helped me when I become a manager and an academy coach, because you had to be adaptable. You had to be flexible with your sessions. You had to coach those players enough that they learned, but not overcoach them either, because you only had 2 90-minute sessions, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And a lot of the times you would play on a Tuesday, so you'd only have Thursday session. All these guys have been working all day, so they just wanted a bit of fun at training as well as being coached. So getting the balance between that really taught me a lot of how to work with players. And I sort of have a saying where you have sessions for the players, but then sessions for us as coaches, and you need to tease both of them out. So am I coaching in this session to get a point across, or am I putting on a session and a practice that I know the players will be fun and enjoyable with still the principles and the philosophy that I coach or train with, but that maybe might buy me some time to then, or buy me some credit with the players to then maybe coach them in the afternoon session or later on in that session where I'm really going to get into detail and stop, stand still, coach them, so to speak. So that really taught me a lot, coaching at non-league level, working in a part-time basis. So I definitely wouldn't underestimate that, and think it's an excellent pathway to explore.
And that is something that I've seen firsthand in terms of your skills that you developed from my experience of working with you back then and working with you sort of midweek while you were doing the stuff in your own time. I know how hard you worked and the sacrifices you made in terms of picking up non-league football around your full-time day job. What other skills did you develop while working essentially 7 days a week that helped you in your role as a manager?
Yeah, I think the bit that I probably mentioned before would be about sort of building the mindset to work hard and putting the hours in. I mean, I'd been doing that for many, many years, and there'd be a lot of people who'd be listening to this as well who understand what that's like, working long hours, starting early, finishing late. So I think that definitely built a resilience in me that knowing that I needed to work those hours. I think it gave me an appreciation then after I'd gone, or when I got into academy football and went to Southampton, having the best facilities there. I mean, at the time they weren't that good actually because we're in League One, but they built them over time. So having the best pitches and the great gyms there and really good S&C coaches and the real support staff of psychologists and video analysis and that sort of thing, it made me appreciate it. But then also, I still sort of have that non-league sort of mentality and sort of chip on my shoulder, you could say a little bit, that it is about the players and about the work that they do. And sometimes too many coaches or too many people inputting in the players can also have a negative effect on these players. So I'm a big believer in the hard work and the mentality of those players wanting to play and grafting and wanting to win and wanting to get better and making themselves better. So I never forget those sort of non-league things that I think I've learned over those times, and I try and regularly put them into my own career for myself to get better, but then also to the players as well. And sometimes the old saying of all the old people say, oh, you don't know how lucky you are, but sometimes at the academies they don't. And I think having that background and experience really, really helped me. I mean, from a pure coaching side, working in non-league at such a young age probably goes back to the question of whether I thought I was ready at the time. I think I was 21, 22, working with senior players. And a lot of those players had been in pro game, come back out, might be 30 years old, earning decent money from non-league football, but also working during the day as well. Trying to coach and manage those players and get them on side with what I was trying to do at the time, being a really inexperienced coach, a very young coach, was some really testing times and probably the hardest of my coaching career. So that was a good challenge for me and set me up later on in my career from those non-league experiences.
So obviously those experiences helped shape your values that you brought into your role at Woking and likely at Grimsby, especially in your role as interim manager. What advice would you give to coaches who are relatively young that are looking to go and follow your footsteps and the footsteps of the people that you interviewed around working in academy football to the transition of first team football?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that I think that, and I probably stumbled across it by accident, but you can go and watch as many sessions as you want. You can look at as much stuff online as you like, or go and see good people work. And there's obviously a value in that as well. But I find the best thing that I found was, and I don't know if I got the advice of it or stumbled across it myself, was just to put the hours in on the grass. So if you're someone who hasn't been a player and you want to be a coach, then you've got to be a good coach. You've got to be a good deliverer. And the only way to get better at that is to practice. So I went in with the mentality I was going to try and coach at as many levels as I could, do all the hours that I could, work with different age ranges. I mean, I worked from sort of 3 and 4 year olds in nurseries, teaching them multi-skill sports, to teenagers on estates, teaching them futsal, to them working in private schools with like a girls team, or I worked in another area of a disabled football as well. And being able to be flexible and adaptable and motivating all those players, working in a classroom of 30 kids with a Christmas tree in the corner and the piano in there, you would know about that, Kevin. many times that you've got to keep them all engaged. The differentiation level is huge. And that really helped me when, for example, I'm working at Southampton and Nigel Adkins calls over and goes, oh, I need 4 players and they need to be defenders. And the whole session's ruined. So I've got to be flexible and adaptable and thinking about how I change things. And I think if you're not coaching and getting the hours in when you're a young coach who might not have played, you're not doing enough. You need to be doing 20 plus hours. You need to be coaching most days and getting that time and experience under your belt. I mean, I've got sessions I use now that I was developing 10, 12 years ago and started then and just changed things, tweaked things, different age groups that I've used with 7 and 8 year olds that I've used with Grimsby Town Football Club recently. Obviously different sizes, different outcomes, different coaching points, but the same principles apply in the same similar sessions that you develop. And I think you've got to practice them over and over again. And I've got that saying that you've got to spend time on the grass. And that, for me, I just found was more important than watching other people work, which obviously I'm not trying to say don't go and watch anyone work, by the way, but I found coaching on the grass was the main thing for me that's really helped.
Brilliant. So you've one of the questions is from Luke that's coming around leadership. So you've obviously done a lot of work on the grass, and you highlighted an area for your personal development around leadership, potentially off the grass. So the question is, what message or messages would you convey to your players if they ever questioned your coaching or decision making as a manager, and cited the fact that you haven't played as a professional yourself?
Yeah, no one's ever said that to my face, but I'm sure they probably said it behind my back, Luke, many, many times, especially if I dropped them or not picked them or got rid of them. But I think, yeah, I mean, I always knew going into the first team environment that I'd have to get the respect of the players. I think that made it easier at the start at Woking because I recruited a lot of those players myself. And something that you never do at academy football, the recruitment staff, they recruit the players, and the players come in. You don't get to choose the players really at academy football. You just get given them and you work with them and you develop them and then you move them on, hopefully a higher level at the club. Whereas in first team football, I didn't imagine the impact I'd have of actually recruiting those players. I mean, I put together a presentation of my philosophy of how I was going to coach, how I was going to play. If I was going to meet a player, I'd get some clips that I'd got from them. I'd put them together, showing them areas of development. I did this with like 30-year-old players as well, of how I would improve them, make them better, where I saw them, what role they were going to play in the team, how we're going to play, what leadership role they would have. And I went and delivered that to them. And most of the time, their agent as well. Even at that level, most players have agents. So they were all quite amazed. They'd never really seen a manager do that before. And I found that like crazy that no one had actually sat down with them and said, well, this is how we're going to play. This is what we're going to do. Rather than just going, I'm going to pay you this amount. Are you happy with that? You're going to take it, come and play for me. So I felt that was quite a powerful way of recruiting players. And then when they came into pre-season, I knew that I had to back up and do what I said I was going to do. So, for example, the lad that we got in, Joe Ward, who'd come through Brighton Academy, he'd had a few loans but hadn't really done it anywhere. We ended up selling him to Peterborough for a 6-figure sum in January. I sold it to him that I was going to work on him individually, analysis-wise, sit down with him once a week, go through video analysis, work with him on his technical ability. So he was a wide player. So we would do crossing and finishing, unopposed and opposed, with individual sessions and small group sessions each week. And I'd work him and put the time into developing. And that was really, I think, the reason that I convinced him to come and play for me at Woking. Because I got him for not a lot of money, actually. Don't tell Joe that, but I'm sure he's on a lot more money now. But he, I knew when he turned up, if he was going to question what I was doing and I'd never played, whereas I had to back up and do what I said I was going to do. I think because I did that and I did work with him and we did improve him and I did say what I was going to do, then he never questioned that impact. So I think if you're going to say you're going to do something, you've got to go and do it. But look, I knew the players were challenging and testing all the time, and they're always looking for you. When you're talking to a player, other players are watching you, seeing how you talk to them and what you're saying and what you're doing. So I was quite well aware of that, but also knew that there was I'm saying a lot of quotes tonight that aren't mine, by the way, but I am claiming that they're other people's because I'm a good thief and steal a lot of things as well. But John Wooden, the famous basketball coach, the college basketball coach, I don't know if people have heard of him. I'd suggest reading his stuff. It's excellent. He said the players are going to talk about you whether you work them hard or whether you don't work them hard at all. So you might as well work them how you want to work them, whether that's hard or not hard, and do what you want with them. So I knew that I had to go and develop them. I think players are always going to talk and probably question what you're doing, whether you've got 1,000 games as a manager or whether you've got no games. You've got to go and improve yourself. And I was quite conscious of going in and doing that.
Brilliant. So in terms of recruitment, and you touched on it, this is a question from Ben. How do you personally use, or would you use, player profiling or relationship building tools to aid recruitment? Is that something that you would adopt when you're looking at recruiting somebody like Joe Ward?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things I learn about recruitment. Myself, even though I have been a manager and called myself a manager, I was probably more of a head coach. And I know the game is moving towards more being head coaches, where there's other people like directors of footballs or real high level recruitment people who can get you those players that fit in with your philosophy. And you've obviously got to have a good link with those players. I think recruitment's very key, that you need other people to help you do that. First and foremost, I'm a coach, I'm a developer. I like to put the team together, coach them, get 3 points, win the game, go again the next week. Recruitment isn't my number one thing, or the bit that I would focus on as much. So I needed to get some people in to help me with recruitment, which I've done during both my time at Woking and at Grimsby. And that was really key. I had a clear philosophy and a clear set position, especially at Woking, on these are the players that I need in these certain positions. I needed fullbacks who could get forward, who could cross the ball, who had good engines, could get up and down. I wanted to play 4-2-3-1. So the number 9 that I wanted to play with needed to be a big physical target man who could hold the ball up. So with the recruitment people, they would give me a list of 5 of those people. I would put in my ones that I believed could fill in those roles. We'd get them together. We profile and analyze each of them, but also not just the technical and physical attributes. A lot of the time was their pathways. What had they done before? Had they showed that they could handle it at that level? Had they been at a higher level but dropped down for certain reasons? What were those reasons? Had they had troubles off the field before? Were they coming to the age where I felt I could really have an impact on them? And I do my research on them, call up many, many, many people about their characters, find out what they're like, call up players who I'd known and played with them as well, and really get into huge detail on what their characters were like. And I certainly learned some lessons as well, because I didn't get all my recruitment right, that's for sure, especially at Woking and Grimsby. So you learn from them. You're not going to get them all right, but I think they are really important to know your strength as a coach or a manager. Some managers just want to do the recruitment and not coach. Others, like myself, want to coach, develop and improve the players and put the team on the pitch and take the sessions and need the assistance with the recruitment.
We've got a couple of questions around COVID. So what would be the best way for somebody potentially to gain an opportunity now that we're obviously in a pandemic? And also linked to that, how did COVID affect Grimsby or your time at Grimsby?
Yeah, for the first question, I could do with some of those answers as well, because it's very difficult at the moment. Because I remember last time I was out of work, it would be easy to go and watch games. I get a ticket every Tuesday, Saturday for a game. I'd go and watch under 23 games midweek. You'd be able to get into games, and there you'd network with people, and a lot of jobs come about from seeing those people and networking. Whereas now, it's been so difficult to get in. I think I've only been to probably 3 or 4 games since I've been out of work for the last couple of months. So it's been very difficult, and it has without doubt affected it, with no fans coming into the stadiums and being able to go to academy games. Getting into academy under 18s and 23s games has been really tough. It's been hard. So I haven't been able to get as many opportunities as what I would like. COVID definitely did affect Grimsby on many reasons. I mean, it was a huge financial strain on the club, not being able to have fans in the club. I mean, the fans are the absolute lifeblood of that football club. It's an amazing fan base there, and I can't speak highly about it. And with the fans not there, it was very difficult for the club. They relied on a lot of the money from the fans coming in, and even though it was only sort of 4,000 or 5,000 compared to most clubs at a lot higher level, it might not be as many, but the club really relied on that. So financially, it was very hard. They had to put a lot of protocols in place around testing, which would cost the club. And I really think there does need to be a financial package for the clubs in and around that level, League 2, League 1, because there will be a lot that go out of business soon, I'm sure. I mean, Grimsby's hopefully not one of them. I think they're very well run, and the people there are very savvy with what they're doing, and it's a well-run club. So yeah, it did affect Grimsby, and I'm sure it affected a lot of other clubs. But in terms of opportunities, it's been difficult for myself to get them, and it's hard. Any opportunities you can get, it's difficult to get. I think probably your network at times like this is going to be key. Ringing up people, speaking to them, sharing Zoom calls, I think has been good. Just going through different things. I've got one tomorrow with one of my mates who's out in America as assistant coach out there. We're going to go through a couple of things, just share some slides on the laptop, what he's been doing, what I've been doing, and challenging each other on a few things. I think it's a good time to be able to do those and maybe do things that you might not necessarily get to do, like I said, like evaluating and getting your, I mean, one thing I'm doing at the moment, which isn't related to opportunities, but is putting together with my playing philosophy and adding the clips and the videos to that, of in possession, what it looks like, examples from Grimsby, Woking when I was at Southampton, and then out of possession, what it looks like in transition, all the pillars I've got, put together clips of me coaching, different sessions, individual sessions, unit sessions, team sessions, 11v11 match prep, set plays, and coming that together with a body of work that I could take around clubs, whether it be an under 18 or under 23 academy job, that I could show this as my work and what I do, or also an opportunity in first team as well. So I found that time, although I haven't been able to go to as many games, I probably wouldn't have been able to put as much effort into that.
Brilliant. So, I mean, you know as well as I do, one of my favorite quotes is, when you're not working, you should be networking. And I know that you've got certain strategies that you like to employ or deploy at the end of a month, just dropping, people you haven't spoken to in a while, a text message just to sort of touch base. Do you have any more of those strategies that might help people in terms of keeping in touch with their network, especially at this time?
I do it with you at the end of every month, Kev. Drop you a message if we haven't spoke. Sorry, mate. But yeah, I think just checking on and seeing how people are. It's a difficult time. Everyone's spending a lot more time at home than what they normally would, and also as well, I'm understanding that when people are in work, they're so busy, and you get a lot of messages, and you're just so busy. It might seem like rude if the person doesn't reply to you straight away, or they don't have time for you at the time. But I think understanding when they're in jobs, it is very stressful and busy, and they've got to prioritize what they're doing. So that would be one way. But I think, yeah, just constantly thinking about your contacts. And I mean, I think probably you taught me this, Kev, was more about giving those contacts something as opposed to always asking them for something. So I think, is there any way that I can help you do this? Or I've got this document that might help you with a team you're playing against the following week, for example, or I've seen this really good player at this younger age group or a non-league level, he's worth having a look at. I think helping out those contacts with giving them something, then and not expecting anything back, and then help you. I mean, I've had contacts that I've been in touch with and speaking to for years and years and years. And I remember one job that I really got an interview because of the contact I'd had for well over 8-9 years. I'm constantly speaking to that person, keeping in touch, meeting them for a coffee, sending them over some documents I might have had, and not expecting anything back, but just having a good relationship and learning from them. That ended up me getting an interview for a job, which resulted in a job eight and a bit years down the line. So that sort of shows that it might take, people aren't just going to do stuff for you straight away. You've got to build that trust, and people won't recommend you until they know you really. And I think that's really key, because their reputation's on the line as well. If they're recommending you for jobs or even bringing you into the club to watch training, you're representing that person. So I think that's really important to think about as well, giving the people back something, but before expecting something yourself.
Brilliant. And you mentioned a practical tip might be getting out and seeing 23 games that are completely free. The fixtures are all available on local club websites. All you normally have to do is make contact with the club, just to let them know that you're going to be on site when the pandemic is over, effectively. That was obviously something that people could do prior to COVID.
I think so. I'm going and watching different games at different levels, even watching the local non-league team that might be a lot lower level than what you want to work or you think you could work. You might pick one or two things up there. You can look at those games as well. And yeah, it's been difficult at the moment to get into 23s and 18s games, but I think once it all opens up again, getting out and watching as many games as you can is good. And you meet people there at those games. You never know who you're going to meet.
You've obviously done pretty much every coaching qualification that you can, as well as some LMA courses. From the start of your journey through to the pro license, what would you say is a common thread or a golden thread that you've had or you would share as an experience when you're working with players? What is the one thing that, it doesn't matter what level that they're at, that would be a real piece of advice when you're working with any players?
From the coaching courses, or from just from what I've found?
From what you found from being on the grass, all those hours on the grass.
Yeah, I think I think probably a technical bit would try and make the practice as relevant to the game as possible. And that isn't necessarily that you just have to play a game all the time. It might be that you're doing an individual session with a right back on playing balls into the striker's feet, and that might be unopposed. But he needs to know where he is on the pitch with that, setting it up in the relevant distances, and et cetera, et cetera. You get where I'm coming from. I think making it relevant and making sure it is fun and enjoyable for the players. There's things that the players won't want to do as well, but making sure that on any level, you've got to find out what motivates those players and how you impact them and get them to get on board with you and learn what you want to teach them, whether that's a first team 30-year-old centre-back at Grimsby who's had many years playing career, or the under 7 in your local team. They've both got motivations and they both want to be there for a certain reason, but they both want to enjoy their football at the same time. So probably those two things. I know they're quite generic and probably a boring answer there, Kev, but they'd probably be the two things that I really felt. I mean, one thing on the coaching badges, I really found them beneficial. Like, a lot of people give a hard time to the A license and the B license and say that they weren't relevant to them and that's not how they'd coach and whatnot. But I just found myself at that time, when I went through them, I really found them beneficial, and certain bits I've taken and still used from them today. I wouldn't necessarily coach an A license way exactly every time, but I used those coaching qualifications as much as I could, and took out the bits that I wanted to learn from them, and really tried to suck out as much as I could from the lessons from them.
And to be fair, it was highlighted in one of the slides that you put up earlier that sometimes the players just want to be told what to do, which was the old format of the A license, where it was very command, very knowledge, competency driven, where you had to demonstrate that you had the knowledge to improve performance. So just on that, if you were working in a club, and these questions are very similar from Jake and Guido. If you were working in a club and you didn't get players that you wanted due to limited budget, what would you do around your philosophy and playing style in terms of plan B?
Yeah, try and get rid of those players as quick as you can. But that's not always easy, obviously. So yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question, because it's something I've sort of questioned myself on after the experience at Woking on that, because you could probably say that I was in that similar situation. We sold a couple of players in January. We had one real key player go back to his parent club because he got injured. And we brought in 3 or 4 other players who probably weren't as good as the ones that we just let go. And we did try and play with the same philosophy. So I think I underestimated how hard it would be to get players in January, something that I didn't really know because I'd never been in that experience before. Get players in January, and then they come in on, say, the Thursday. You're getting ready for a game on the Friday, and then the next game is on the Tuesday, and then the Saturday, and you don't have enough time to work with those players on the coaching on the pitch. Whereas when I got the team assembled pre-season, we got them assembled quite early, and I had the whole pre-season, 6 weeks, and obviously there were games in pre-season too, but there was under no pressure to win those games. I could really coach and implement my philosophy. So the one bit I really learned was the way I work, and other clubs with maybe other non-league teams could do this, but if they're not coaching the same way that I'm coaching, is try and have a less amount of changeover of players during that January period. One thing I learned a lot of, because I had 4 or 5, I brought in 4 or 5 new players, and to try and get them up to speed was quite difficult. I mean, think of one example. We filmed every training session. I always view the footage after training that day or the following day to watch training, to see what I would do, to see what the players would do. You pick up things when you're coaching it you don't get to see as much. And I watched, like, we would start most days with a box, with a rondo, with different challenges, different restrictions in the rondo. And I looked at the 5 players who I'd brought in, and they were all in the one box compared to, we'd always start with 2 boxes. We'd have 10 in one and 10 in the other. We had around 20 players most of the time, with a few youth team players in there. And I looked at the one rondo box compared to the other box. And because those 5 players are in that box, they just didn't get it enough of the reaction of trying to get the ball back, the counter press. And the minute you lose it, bang, you go and get it back straight away. And that box was so much worse a standard or poor standard compared to the box that was all the players that I'd been constantly working with during pre-season, all the pre-season. And it was just like a bit of a light bulb moment. I looked at it and went, oh, wow, I've underestimated this and got probably rid of too many players and got too many players in. Maybe because I had to budget-wise and we had to sell players, etc. But it made me think, one, it'd be difficult to take over a team during the season. That would be very hard because of the limited amount of time you've got to train and plan and implement what you wanted with the players, because you've got to prep for the games as well, and how I wouldn't have changed over as many players that January. So hopefully that sort of answers the question. I think it did.
Brilliant, thank you. So another one that's multifaceted by two questions that have just come in. So the first one is, in Germany, there is obviously quite a clear pathway, and there are some successful examples of coaches coming through the academies into first team football. Do you think that is a potential career opportunity over here? And secondly, linked to that, Abdul's question is, would you consider working abroad?
Yeah, I mean, you are seeing a lot of coaches come through the academy system and younger coaches in Germany. I think there was a stat, there was 8 coaches in their 30s. Was it 8 coaches, Kev? Maybe we spoke about, I think 7 or 8 coaches, or six or 8 coaches in their 30s, under 40, coaching in the Bundesliga, which I find very interesting. All with strong philosophies, and obviously you've got the ones that have been successful there as well. But I think that's quite interesting, and the fact that those coaches are getting opportunities abroad, I think, shows that it can be done. I think it's happening more and more here in England, although I think, or in the UK, I think it's a little bit slower to get those opportunities as opposed to somewhere like in Germany or even sort of like Scandinavian countries and that. I'm not sure what the reason is for that. Maybe it's because the Premier League is such a big league and such a big focus that they bring in the best foreign managers and English managers if they're there, and then everybody gets filtered down. It's harder to get the opportunities. But I think maybe with COVID coming in, that could be a real opportunity possibly for younger managers to get opportunities. Clubs don't want to spend as much money on more older and experienced managers. They might give more managers a chance. So I think the more opportunities that the younger managers get and the better that they do, the better that is for all of us sort of people who are trying to be coaches and managers in first team football or at academies. And yeah, hopefully that I see that changing, but hopefully it'll keep going along those lines and you can get the opportunities there.
Brilliant. So would you work abroad? Is the second...
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I already am abroad, really, as in I'm born in Australia and moved over here when I was sort of 20. So I think of myself as sort of being abroad a little bit. But yeah, I definitely would. I'd be open to the opportunity. I haven't had really anything concrete at the moment. Depends where it was as well. Depends what the setup would be. Depends on all sorts of things. I think the MLS is interesting. The league below the MLS, the USL. I think I've watched a few games recently on that league, and that's quite an interesting one. Obviously, keep tabs on Australia, first team football there, having come from there and know a lot of the players and watch the teams there. So I think it'd be interesting. But somewhere like Germany would be, I think, fascinating, or a really strong league overseas to go and work in academy football over there as well. I think would be fascinating. And it's just about the contacts. A lot of my contacts are in England and the UK, so I don't have as many contacts overseas as what I have here. So I think probably my next opportunity will come here, but I would definitely be open to working abroad from where I am at the moment.
So just got a few more. So this one's from Sasha. So if you had to choose to be brilliant at one skill as a manager and average at all the others, what would you choose and why?
Winning games. I think winning games would be the number one thing. But no, I think skill-wise, I think has got to be the relationship with the players and with the board and the people there. Being a great person with the relationships, I think, is as key, is more key for me than the actual football part. I think if you don't have those relationships right, then you could be the best coach you want, but the players aren't going to do what you want or play to their full potential or improve and develop if you don't have those relationships right. So I'd say you've got to be a great communicator, and that would be the main thing. Communication and relationships would be the one, and then be average at the others.
Brilliant. So on the subject of communication, Pascalis's question is around trying to insist on your idea that you believe is fundamentally right when you're the assistant manager. How would you go around influencing upwards around tactics or strategies or personnel in the lineup?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because I really learned about how to do that job when I was manager at Woking. I had a great assistant, Jason Goodliff, who'd been an assistant for a long time. He worked in and around that level. He'd been a player, played League Two, League One, and a lot of non-league. And he was very good at, and he said it quite early on when I interviewed him. I didn't know him before he took the job. And he said, look, I'm always going to tell you exactly what I think, but then it's up to you to decide what you want to do. You're the man in charge. You're the manager. You're the head guy to make the decisions. But I'll always tell you what you think, and what you decide to go and do, then I'll go and implement that together with you to back you up. So we would say, like, when we're in the coach's room, we would always say exactly what we think, and he would always tell me, he'd go, no, I don't think you should do that because of this, this, and this. And he would be bluntly honest and tell me exactly what he thought. Sometimes that wasn't easy to take, but I knew when we went on the pitch, he would always have my back, whether he agreed with what I was doing or not. And that was so key. And that really helped me when I got the job as assistant manager, a job that I hadn't done before under Michael Jolly. And I'd like to think that I did that exactly the same. I would tell him exactly what I thought when we're in the privacy of the coaching room and at the right time, because it's hard to hear sometimes if you're the manager and your staff don't agree with what you're saying, because I don't think that they want, or I didn't want when I was a manager, a yes man to agree with what I was saying. However, for example, he might say, oh, I want to play 3 at the back. And I would say, no, I think we definitely need to play a 4. However, he says, no, I'm going to go with this decision and play 3 at the back. And I want you to take the back 3 and work on them at this. I can't then go out there and go, oh, listen, lads, I'd be playing 4 at the back here if I was the manager. You just can't do that. You need to go and implement, because you're working for that manager, what he wants you to do. Having been okay in the knowledge, knowing that you've told him what you've thought and that it might not be exactly how you would do it yourself. But I think that's where you get the relationship right with the manager you're working for. If you're going to go and work for a manager who doesn't have, whose beliefs and philosophies are so far apart from yours, that's going to cause problems, because you won't be able to work in the way you want to work. I've still got a good relationship with Michael Jolly, because even though I stayed on after he left Grimsby, I think he knew that I was always honest and open with him and was trying to do the right thing by him whenever we were there. We still speak now and would love to work with him again in the future. So I probably learned how to be a good assistant due to the assistant I had at Woking.
Great insight. So thank you, Anthony. It's the last question. I know we're getting close and we've run over, so I apologise about that, but some of the questions have been absolutely brilliant. So the question is from Jamie, who is currently managing a first team out in Iceland. So his question is, you've obviously been part of an application and interview process in senior football on several occasions. On reflection, has there been any critical areas which have equated to success, and equally any specific elements of those processes that you have learned are crucial?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really sure on how to do it necessarily when I first got interviewed, because it was obviously very different to an academy job interview. But I went into, and always have done in all the first team jobs I've done, and the ones I've had even when I haven't got the job, is going into like absolute detail. So first of all, the first bit I started at wasn't the team, wasn't the club, wasn't anything. It was who's on the board and what do they do and what had been their past experience. So I spent a good hour, 2 hours researching the board members whose job who were going to be interviewing me. There were 6 people on the board at Woking at the time. So I looked at them, I think it was 5 or 6, and looked right into their background. So social media, where they'd made their money, why they're on the board, what their link with the club was. I listened to interviews from them, watched any video I could find, so I knew how they talk, I hope none of them are listening now, by the way, but how they talk, how they spoke, what sort of things would get them going with the questions and answers, what type of thinkers they were. I could relate or I could make sure that I was hitting every one of them at some stage in my presentation. So the research that I did actually on the detail of who was interviewing me I found was so important. And I do that same if I'm going into a club. I want to know everything about all the people that are at the club. I thought that was very important to go. Then I went in with what I was going to do at the club, more opposed to than what I'd done in the past. I think when I did another presentation recently, you highlighted that, Kev, on you're very much on what you're going to do when you get into the club, what players you're going to recruit, how you're going to play, what you're going to do with the fans, what my PR strategy was, how I was going to work with the young players, how I was going to sell players to make them money, which I did at Woking and at Grimsby to an extent. They sold players there too. So I think I wanted to make sure that I hit all those things. So I think that when boards and owners and chairmen want to hire you, they want to know, how are you going to make the club money? Is that by getting them promoted into the higher league? Is that by bringing through the young players and saving the money on the budget? Is that by developing, improving and selling players? Is it by winning games and getting more fans into the stadium? So I made sure I hit all those things. And every club's proud of their tradition, of their history, of their fans. And I spent a good bit of time on those presentations on how I would implement a community approach to linking in with the community, how I would make the players link in with a community approach. We had a thing at Woking where the players, win, lose or draw, and the staff had to go around and clap all three sides of the ground. We only had three. We didn't have four, so we couldn't clap the other side. But you had to go around and clap all three sides. If you got beat 5-0 away from home, which luckily we didn't, but we did have some bad results, we would always go and clap the fans, no matter what they were doing, what they were saying, to show their respect and to show that we were fronting up to them. We had, and I sold that in the interview. I would say that's what we're going to do, and that's what we did. I said to them, I did a bit of research and found out from some fans actually that players used to go in the bar at Woking after the games, and the fans loved that, but that hadn't been done for 4 or 5 years. So I made it compulsory for the players, win, lose or draw, home games, to go in the bar from 5:30 till 6 o'clock. And you had to do that after every game. And let's be honest, towards the end as well, we weren't having some good results. And the last thing we want to do was go in the bar. But it helped the bar staff out to get them on our side. They loved it because people then stayed longer at the games because they knew the players and the staff were coming in. They could talk about the games. Therefore, they spent more money. Therefore, you get the staff on your side. Therefore, they'll do more things to help you. And I sold that in the interview process. I think that's underestimated. Everyone goes on a lot in interviews about how you're going to play and what players you're going to recruit, which is important. Don't get me wrong, definitely important. But I went down the other things like the community, the link with the academy, the getting to know the people who are interviewing you and the club inside out. And I found that was really important and something I'd take with me definitely in the other interviews, and have done since, even in the jobs that I haven't got. I've interviewed for plenty of jobs and I've still done the same thing. So I found they're good.
Brilliant. Anthony, I'm not going to keep you any longer because it's coming up to 9, but I just wanted to say massive thank you for sharing your insights. It's been invaluable for me, sort of reading through some of your slides and listening to you talk over them. For everyone else, I'm very grateful for you logging in, and please keep an eye out for future events. And Anthony, hopefully we'll be able to get you back on, maybe to discuss something different, because I know you've got a wide range of materials that you could share based on your plethora of experiences. But thank you very much for your time, mate. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you very much for having me, Kev. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Take care.